A bronze gear sits silent for 2,000 years, holding secrets no modern engineer can fully name. This video reveals 30 ancient tools with advanced design, but no agreed-upon function, objects that shatter the simple story of human progress. By the end, you will see history not as a straight line, but as a landscape of forgotten peaks where genius flickered and vanished. We will encounter a device that predicted eclipses before the birth of Christ, and a crystal that may have guided ships across trackless oceans. What does it mean when the most sophisticated creations of a civilization are the ones we can no longer understand that silent bronze gear is not just old, it is profoundly clever? To call an ancient object advanced is not simply about age, but about the startling sophistication we can still measure today. It means encountering a level of complexity, precision, or material science that seems to belong to a later chapter of history. We are not looking at a well-made spear or a beautifully carved pot, items whose purpose is written into their very form. We are confronting artifacts that display geometric precision, intricate moving parts, or the use of rare materials worked with a skill that challenges our timeline of technological progress. The mystery deepens not because the object is broken or incomplete, but because even when perfectly preserved, its intended use remains stubbornly opaque. No surviving text describes it. No other artifact quite matches it. It sits in a museum case, a solution waiting for its problem, a key without a lock. This tantalizing gap between obvious whose lost writings hinted at such devices, or perhaps a follower of the astronomer Hipparchus, we do not know. More hauntingly, was this a one-of-a-kind prototype, a royal toy for a wealthy patron? Or was it evidence of a broader tradition of complex geared mechanisms that simply did not survive the fires of libraries and the decay of time? The mechanism stands as a stark monument not to what the ancient world knew, but to what it could do. It whispers that an entire lineage of mechanical genius may have risen, flourished, and vanished, leaving behind only this single, salvaged echo from the silent depths. From the cosmic computer of the Greeks, we descend to a more intimate, tactile mystery scattered across the cold earth of northern Europe. In fields and old settlement sites from England to Hungary, people have been unearthing small, curious objects for centuries. Cast in bronze or carved from stone, each is a hollow geometric form, often small enough to fit comfortably in your hand. They possess 12 flat, pentagonal faces, and at the center of each face is a circular hole, each hole a different diameter. These are the Roman dodecahedrons, and they are a historian's perfect riddle. Dating from roughly the 2nd to the 4th century of the Common Era, over 100 of them have been found, yet not a single shred of written evidence from the Romans themselves mentions what they are. No fresco shows one in use, no poem alludes to its function. They are ghosts in the archaeological record, physically present but contextually silent. The theories poured forth by modern minds are a fascinating mirror of our own times. Some suggested they were tools for knitting, the different sized holes used to create fingers for gloves. Others proposed they were simple candle holders, with wax drippings found inside some specimens. More ambitious ideas cast them as surveying instruments, or devices for determining the optimal planting date for grain by measuring the angle of sunlight. Some see them as ceremonial objects, perhaps used in religious or military rituals. Yet every theory crumbles under scrutiny. The holes are often not worn in a way consistent with threading yarn. As candle holders, they are oddly complex and inefficient. As precision instruments, they lack any markings for measurement. So we are left with a population of identical puzzles, spread across thousands of miles of empire, crafted with care and consistency, for a purpose that evaporated from human memory. Each new dodecahedron discovered does not bring us closer to an answer, it only adds another question. They stand as a humbling reminder that an object can be common, well-made, and widely distributed, and still guard its secret forever. This forces us to ask a different kind of question. What if the function was so ordinary, so embedded in daily life, that no one ever thought to write it down? Or what if its purpose was deliberately obscure, known only to a specific group whose knowledge died with them? The dodecahedron challenges not just our ingenuity, but our very assumption that widespread artifacts must have an obvious, utilitarian explanation. Sometimes, the most common object can be the greatest enigma of all. The dodecahedron's mystery lies in its silent ubiquity, but a single, fragile artifact from the far north tells a different kind of tale. In the 1940s, within the ruins of a Norse convent on Greenland's island, archaeologists found a weathered wooden disc. Dating to the 10th century, it is a humble object, roughly the size of a small plate, yet its surface tells a complex story. Carved into the wood are a series of carefully spaced notches and lines, and at its center is a hole, a place where a small gnomon or pointer would have once been fixed. To the untrained eye, it might resemble a simple sundial, but this interpretation only scratches the surface of a much deeper navigational puzzle. Some researchers, examining the pattern of lines and the disk's potential alignment with the sun's path at specific latitudes, propose it was far more sophisticated. They suggest it could have been a bearing dial, a kind of solar compass used by Viking sailors to maintain a course across the treacherous, featureless expanse of the North Atlantic. The theory involves using the shadow cast by the gnomon along the notched lines at specific times of day, potentially even during the long, twilight summers of the high Arctic, to find true north. This was not simple sun following, but a calculated application of celestial geometry. The implications are profound. If this small wooden disc was indeed a functional navigational instrument, it means Viking mariners possessed a tool of remarkable refinement. A portable system for orientation that went far beyond the traditional view of their wayfinding, which relied on landmarks, birds, waves, and oral lore. It hints at a structured, repeatable method for open ocean sailing, a technological edge that could explain the astonishing range and consistency of their voyages from Scandinavia to Iceland, Greenland, and even the shores of North America. Yet the certainty we crave remains just out of reach. The exact method of using the disc is contested. Without a surviving manual or a clear contemporary description, researchers must reconstruct its use from the artifact alone, leading to competing theories about its accuracy and full capabilities. Was it a precise tool for expert navigators or a more generalized aid for approximating direction? This humble piece of wood, therefore, does more than challenge a historical timeline, it challenges a perception. It asks us to reconsider the Viking sailor not merely as a fearless adventurer guided by instinct and myth, but potentially as a practical technician. Reading the sun's arc with a crafted instrument to conquer the trackless sea. Its true function may be debated, but its silent presence forever alters the map of what we thought was possible. Yet the Vikings navigated by the light of the sun, a power source as ancient as time itself. But in the dry soil of Mesopotamia, a far more subtle form of power may have been captured in a simple clay jar. Known today as the Baghdad Battery, this unassuming artifact is a collection of 3 components: a 13-centimeter tall pot sealed with an asphalt plug. Inside, a rolled copper sheet forms a cylinder, and suspended within that cylinder is an iron rod. dating to the Parthian or Sasanian period, sometime between 250 and 600 of the Common Era. It was unearthed in the 1930s near the Iraqi capital. Its discovery sparked a controversy that still simmers. If you were to fill this jar with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or grape juice, a fascinating thing happens. The acidic electrolyte reacts with the two dissimilar metals, the iron and the copper, creating a small but measurable flow of electricity. In essence, it becomes a simple galvanic cell, capable of producing just over 1 volt of charge. This fact alone is enough to ignite the imagination. Was this an ancient battery? Did the artisans or harness this trickle of current for a practical purpose? The most compelling theory suggests electroplating, the process of using electricity to bond a thin layer of a precious metal, like gold, onto the surface of a less valuable object. It is a method that would explain the existence of exceptionally fine, microscopically thin gold plating found on some artifacts from the region, plating that seems too uniform for traditional fire gilding techniques. Proponents point to experiments where replicas of the jar were used to successfully electroplate small silver objects with gold, proving the concept is physically possible with the technology of the era. Yet for all the elegant theory, the hard evidence remains elusive. No Baghdad battery has ever been found with wires or electrodes attached. No ancient text from any culture of the period describes the generation or use of electricity in this manner. And crucially, no electroplated artifact has been definitively linked through archaeological context to the site where these jars were discovered. The counterargument is equally pragmatic. Perhaps the jar was simply a secure storage vessel for valuable religious or magical scrolls, with the copper cylinder acting as a protective case for the parchment, and the iron rod as a convenient handle. The asphalt seal would have kept out moisture and pests. In this view, the electrical effect is a pure accident, a curious byproduct of its construction that its creators never noticed or understood. This is the true heart of the debate, a conflict between two different ways of seeing the past. On one side is the thrilling narrative of intentional discovery, where ancient scientists stumbled upon a fundamental force and applied it with clever ingenuity. On the other is the more cautious, perhaps mundane, explanation of coincidence, where function and physics intersect without human comprehension. The Baghdad battery, therefore, is more than a potential power source. It is a litmus test for how we interpret ambiguity in the archaeological record. Do we see the spark of lost knowledge, or do we see a sealed jar, guarding nothing more than the quiet dust of centuries? It forces us to ask a difficult question. In the silent gaps of history, is it more reasonable to assume a sophisticated explanation or a simple one? The answer may depend less on the artifact, and more on our own desire to find forgotten light in the ancient dark. Clay can hold a voice long after the speaker has turned to dust, but what if that voice speaks in a language no one alive can understand? On the sun-baked island of Crete, within the ruins of the magnificent Bronze Age palace of, an archaeologist in the year 1908 made a find that was both utterly mundane and profoundly baffling. It was a simple disk of fired clay about the size of a small plate unearthed in a basement room. Its surface, however, was anything but simple. Spiraling inward from the edge, 241 symbols were pressed into the clay, arranged in 45 distinct groups. There are human figures and animals, plants and tools, shields and ships, all rendered in a stylized pictorial script. This is the disk, and it is a solitary shout into the void of history. Dating to the 2nd millennium before the Common Era, in the heart of the sophisticated Minoan civilization, the disk is an anomaly. Its script appears nowhere else. No other tablet, no wall inscription, no seal ring shares its specific set of symbols. It is a one-of-a-kind document, and that isolation is the core of its mystery. Was it a religious hymn to a forgotten goddess, a record of a treaty, a list of offerings, or perhaps the rules for a sacred board game? Without a stone, a parallel text in a known language, every attempt at decipherment is built on guesswork. The very method of its creation deepens the puzzle. Each symbol was not carved or drawn, but stamped into the soft clay using a separate, pre-made seal. This means the Minoan artisan possessed a set of movable type, individual punches for each sign, over 1,000 years before such a technology would appear in China, and over 2,000 years before press in Europe. This fact alone is staggering. It implies a desire, or perhaps a need, for reproducible text, yet we have no other evidence that this printing method was ever used again in the ancient Aegean. So we are left with a devastating contradiction. A technology that suggests standardization and dissemination was used to create a message that is utterly unique and profoundly private. Perhaps the disk was a royal decree, meant to be and sent across the kingdom, but the copies were on perishable material that simply vanished. Or maybe it was a singular work of art, a poetic composition, or a diplomatic message from a foreign land, its script dying with the scribe who carried it. The disk does not just ask us what it says, it forces a deeper, more unsettling question about how knowledge lives and dies. A whole system of written communication, a complete intellectual technology, can flicker into existence, leave a single, beautiful artifact as its only testament, and then vanish without a trace. It is a reminder that history is not merely the story of what survived, but a haunting narrative shaped by immense and silent voids. The disk is not a broken piece of a larger puzzle. It is the only piece we have of a puzzle whose very picture we have lost. A solitary shout in clay gives way to a whisper written in gold on the night sky. In the dense forests of what is now Germany, around the year 1600 before the Common Era, a metalworker performed an act of astonishing artistry. They took a bronze disc, roughly the size of a large dinner plate, and upon its dark surface, they inlaid delicate sheets of gold. They placed a full moon and a crescent moon. They scattered a cluster of 32 stars. Between them, they set a great golden sun, or perhaps a full moon, flanked by two sweeping arcs along the disk's edge. This is the sky disk, and it is the oldest known portable representation of the cosmos ever found. Its discovery in 1999, recovered from looters who had taken it from a hilltop site, sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Here was not an abstract pattern, but a specific, intentional map of the heavens, crafted over 1,000 years before the earliest written descriptions of Greek astronomy. The symbols are not random. The cluster of 7 stars is almost certainly the Pleiades, a star group of immense importance to ancient agricultural societies across the globe. The golden arcs are now understood to mark the solstice sunrises and sunsets as viewed from its discovery site. This transforms the disk from a beautiful object into a functional one. It could have been a sophisticated agricultural calendar. By aligning the disk with the horizon and observing the position of the Pleiades relative to the sun and moon, a community could have determined the precise time to plant and to harvest, turning celestial cycles into a guide for survival. Yet its power may have been far more than practical. Imagine this disk held aloft by a chieftain or a spiritual leader during a ceremony on that high hill. In their hands, they do not just hold a tool, they hold the very order of the universe. They possess the knowledge of when the seasons turn, a knowledge that grants authority and commands obedience. The disk then becomes a potent symbol of power, a physical manifestation of a leader's connection to the divine rhythms of the cosmos. This duality is the core of its enduring mystery. Was it a farmer's almanac cast in bronze, or a king's scepter forged from starlight? The truth likely lives in the space between. It was almost certainly both a precise instrument and a sacred emblem, its value derived from its ability to bridge the earthly and the celestial. The sky disk reshapes our understanding of early Europe not by revealing a forgotten technology of gears and mechanics, but by revealing a forgotten sophistication of thought. It proves that people of the Bronze Age were not merely observing the sky, they were encoding its laws into art, using the stars to structure their society, their labor, and their very conception of power. It is a reminder that sometimes the most advanced tool is not one that performs a physical task, but one that organizes a human world. But a map of the stars is a static guide. To truly grasp the cosmos, one must feel its motion. Scattered through ancient Greek and Roman texts are hints of a device that did just that, a machine not of prediction like the mechanism, but of demonstration. Later centuries would know it well as the Armillary sphere, a beautiful skeletal model of the heavens built from a series of interlocking metal rings. These rings represented the great circles of the celestial sphere, the equator, the ecliptic path of the sun, and the meridians. At the center sat a tiny Earth, allowing a student or philosopher to physically manipulate the model to visualize the rotation of the stars, the changing seasons, and the wanderings of planets. While stunning examples from the medieval and Renaissance periods fill museums, their origins reach back into a much deeper past. The Greek polymath Ptolemy, working in the 2nd century of the Common Era, described the principles of such a sphere in his monumental work on astronomy. Earlier philosophers like Hipparchus likely used similar conceptual models. The challenge is that no complete Greek armillary sphere has ever been found. What survives are tantalizing fragments, references in poetry, and descriptions in technical manuals. Archaeologists have recovered metal rings and components that could belong to such instruments, but without the full assembly, their exact design and complexity remain a subject of scholarly reconstruction. This gap between textual description and physical evidence is where the mystery lives. We know the Greeks possessed the theoretical sophistication to build them. Their mathematics and astronomy demanded a three-dimensional model to explain the complicated motions they observed. An armillary sphere would have been the ultimate teaching tool, transforming abstract celestial geometry into a tangible, turning sculpture one could hold in one's hands. But were these early versions precise observational instruments, used to measure the coordinates of stars, or were they primarily philosophical aids, beautiful illustrations of a cosmic order? The fragments suggest a profound truth about ancient science. Sometimes, the most advanced idea is not the one that leaves behind the sturdiest artifact, but the one that plants a seed in the mind. The Greek armillary sphere, even known only through echoes, represents a leap in thought, a desire not just to chart the sky, but to hold its elegant machinery and understand it from the outside in. It is a ghost of a tool, whose greatest function may have been to make the universe feel comprehensible. A model of the cosmos turns silently in a philosopher's hand, but on the other side of the world, another mind sought to measure the Earth's own violent shudders. In the year 132 of the Common Era, within the Han dynasty's imperial court, a scholar and inventor named presented the emperor with a device of awe-inspiring elegance. It was a large, ornate bronze urn, nearly 2 meters tall. Encircling its upper portion were 8 dragon heads, each gazing outward in a cardinal or direction. Crouched below each dragon sat a waiting bronze toad, its mouth open in anticipation. Inside each dragon's jaws rested a delicate bronze ball. According to historical records, when an earthquake occurred, even one too distant for people in the capital to feel, a mechanism within the urn would trigger. One dragon would release its ball, which would clatter into the mouth of the toad below with a loud, metallic ring, clearly indicating the direction from which the seismic waves had arrived. The court annals report that on one occasion, a ball dropped without any perceptible tremor in the capital. Skeptical officials dismissed it as a malfunction until days later, a messenger arrived from a province hundreds of miles away reporting a major earthquake, precisely in the direction the dragon had indicated. This reported accuracy is what transforms the device from a curious artifact into a stunning mystery of early science. It's demonstrated a profound understanding of seismic energy's directional travel, a concept not formally established in the West for over 1,500 years. Yet the precise ingenuity inside that bronze urn died with its creator. The texts describe its effect, but not its internal workings. Did it employ a carefully balanced pendulum that would swing toward the source of the tremor, tripping a delicate latch? Or was it an inertia-based system, where a central mass remained stationary as the urn shifted around it, guiding a mechanism to release the correct ball? Modern engineers and historians have built replicas based on both principles, and some have shown a remarkable ability to indicate direction. Proving the concept was physically achievable with second-century technology, but which design we cannot know. The device itself is lost, likely melted down long ago in some forgotten conflict or period of upheaval. Its existence survives only in descriptions, a ghost of genius haunting the pages of history. This loss forces a poignant reflection. This stands as a towering example of how a civilization can reach a peak of instrumental sophistication, a peak that can be eroded by the simple passage of time and the fragility of knowledge. It was not a toy, not a ceremonial object, but a genuine tool for state administration, meant to provide early warning of disasters in a vast empire. Its silence today is a reminder that scientific advancement is not a constant upward climb, but a landscape where brilliant summits can be lost in the fog, waiting to be rediscovered centuries later. The cosmos could be measured in bronze, but the human spirit sought expression in a different kind of stone. Far from the ordered skies of Europe, in the lush, humid lowlands of ancient Mexico, the Olmec civilization laid the cultural bedrock for olive. Flourishing from around 1500 to 400 years before the Common Era, they are often called the mother culture of the region, and they left behind a legacy not in texts, but intangible. Mesmerizing objects. Their most famous creations are the colossal stone heads, but it is their smaller, portable artifacts that present a more intimate and elusive puzzle. Craftsmen worked exquisite jade, serpentine, and other greenstones into celts, figurines, and pendants, objects that fit in the hand but carry the weight of an entire worldview. The surfaces of these items are often carved with intricate, almost shockingly modern-looking geometric patterns, precise spirals, and interlocking designs that feel both ancient and avant-garde. Others depict human figures merging with animal features. The so-called jaguar forms with downturned mouths and feline traits, beings that exist in a space between the human realm and the powerful natural world. What were these for? Their beauty is undeniable, but their specific function slips through our fingers. Without any deciphered writing from the Olmec, their script remains a profound mystery. Each object is a sentence in a language we cannot read. Were they used in personal rituals, perhaps in acts of ceremonial bloodletting, a practice known in later cultures to commune with ancestors and deities. Could they have been badges of office, symbols of political or spiritual power passed among an elite class? Or might they have been components of a larger, now disassembled ceremonial apparatus, like sacred bundles or altar pieces? The very ambiguity is a lesson in itself. These are not tools for farming or building. They are tools for the spirit, artifacts of what we might call spiritual technology. Their function was to mediate between the human and the divine, to make the intangible tangible. When we hold one, we are not holding a forgotten gadget. We are holding a concentrated piece of a forgotten cosmology, a key to a relationship with the universe that valued transformation, power, and the deep. Green heart of the living earth. Their silence speaks volumes about the human need to create meaning, not just to solve practical problems, but to answer the great, unspoken questions of existence. The Olmec Greenstone holds the weight of a spiritual cosmos, but in the dry sands of Egypt, the challenge was one of pure, staggering physics. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a monument to a civilization's ambition, a structure so precisely aligned and massively scaled that it has fueled endless speculation. Yet for all our awe, a quiet, practical mystery lies at its foundation. We know the pyramids were built, but the exact toolkit used to execute this vision remains a subject of profound debate. The stones themselves, some weighing over 60 tons, were transported across miles of desert, lifted hundreds of feet into the air, and fitted together with seams thinner than a credit card. How was this achieved with the technology of the Old Kingdom, over 4,500 years ago? The frustrating truth is that we have no complete, definitive set of builders' tools from the site. What we have are clues, marks left behind, and logical deductions that point to a sophisticated, yet partially theoretical, engineering system. Copper saws, for instance, were certainly available. But copper is a soft metal. Experiments show that a copper blade alone could not cut through hard limestone or granite. The missing ingredient was an abrasive, likely quartz sand, poured into the cut. The saw's action would drag the hard sand grains across the stone, slowly grinding it down through patient, immense labor. This turns a simple tool into a complex process, a marriage of metal and geology. Similarly, moving the blocks is thought to have involved wooden sledges. A famous wall painting from a later tomb shows a massive statue being transported on a sledge, with workers pouring liquid in front of it. For decades, this was interpreted as a ceremonial act. Modern research suggests it was practical physics. The liquid was likely water, which would turn the desert sand into a firm, slick surface, drastically reducing the friction and the number of men needed to pull the load. This transforms a simple sledge into a precision instrument of logistics, requiring an understanding of soil mechanics and hydration. The greatest gap in our knowledge concerns the final ascent. How were these blocks raised to the upper courses? The prevailing theory involves a system of ramps, either straight-on, zigzagging, or wrapping around the pyramid's growing sides. Yet no archaeological evidence of such a massive ramp structure has been conclusively found. Some propose an internal, spiraling ramp within the pyramid's own core, a theory that is elegant but difficult to verify without invasive exploration. The absence of these grand, perishable wooden frameworks is the central lesson. It means the most iconic construction project in human history relies on a toolkit we have mostly inferred. The advanced engineering was not necessarily in magical tools, but in the breathtakingly smart application of simple ones, orchestrated on a scale that boggles the mind. The pyramids stand not as a mystery of alien technology, but as a testament to how human ingenuity, organization, and relentless effort can leave behind monuments of stone, while the clever, Wooden tools that built them vanish into the dry air without a trace. The pyramid builders left no blueprint for their ramps, only the towering result of their labor. But on the walls of a temple far from Giza, a different kind of image was carved, one that would ignite a modern controversy as bright as any artificial flame. Within the Temple of Hathorat, a bas-relief carved in the late Ptolemaic or early Roman period, around 2,000 years ago, presents a scene that seems to leap out of its ancient context. It shows two figures, each holding what looks like a giant, elongated bulb or vase. Inside each bulb, a snake stretches its body along the length, its head pointed toward one end. The bulb is supported by a pillar, and a box-like object sits at its base, with a cable-like line connecting it to the figures. To a modern eye, conditioned by the icons of our own technology, the resemblance is startling. It looks for all the world like a person holding up a giant, archaic light bulb, complete with a filament in the shape of a snake, powered by a boxy generator. This is the so-called light bulb, and it has become a cornerstone for theories suggesting the ancient Egyptians possessed, and perhaps even used, electrical lighting. Proponents ask, how else could they have painted the deep interiors of tombs and temples without leaving soot marks from torches? Could this relief be a technical diagram, a record of lost knowledge? The narrative is compelling, painting a picture of a civilization far more technologically advanced than our histories allow. Yet mainstream Egyptology offers a profoundly different and deeply symbolic interpretation. Scholars point to the rich tapestry of Egyptian myth surrounding the scene. The bulb, they argue, is not a bulb at all, but a stylized representation of a lotus flower, a sacred symbol of creation and rebirth. The snake emerging from it is not a filament, but a divine serpent, a manifestation of the god representing the primordial life force. The pillar is the pillar, a symbol of stability, and the box is the sacred shrine that holds this power. The entire tableau is read not as an instruction manual for electricians, but as a cosmological illustration, depicting the moment of creation where the lotus spawns the serpent of life. Connected to the enduring stability of the gods, this artifact, therefore, sits at a fascinating crossroads. It is less a mystery of ancient function and more a mirror for our own desires. It exemplifies the powerful human tendency to see our own world in the artifacts of the past, to project our technologies onto their symbols. The clash is not really about what the Egyptians knew, but about how we choose to interpret the silent language of their art. Do we seek a literal, technological function that aligns with our understanding of progress, or do we immerse ourselves in their symbolic worldview, where a flower and a snake tell the story of the universe's birth? The relief challenges us to ask a difficult question. In our search for lost advanced technology, are we sometimes so focused on finding a light switch in the past that we miss the deeper, more illuminating truth of how they saw the light itself deep in the jungles of southern Costa? A different kind of geometry defies the tangled green chaos. Starting in the 1930s, as the United Fruit Company cleared land for banana plantations, workers began to uncover something extraordinary. Rolling out from beneath the roots of massive trees were stone spheres, perfectly round and impossibly smooth. Not just a few, but hundreds of them, scattered across the landscape once inhabited by the culture, which flourished from around 800 to 1500 of the Common Era. These are the stone spheres of Costa, and they present a mystery of both purpose and process. Their sizes range from that of a small melon to colossal giants over 2 meters in diameter, weighing more than 15 tons. The larger ones achieve a sphericity that is almost unnerving, a geometric perfection that feels out of place in an ancient world without precision machining. How did the people, who had no metal tools, accomplish this? The prevailing theory is one of immense patience and clever technique. Craftsmen likely selected large boulders of a relatively workable stone like gabbro, a coarse-grained igneous rock. Using other, harder stones as hammers, they would have painstakingly pecked away at the surface, gradually roughing out a spherical shape. The final, breathtaking smoothness was likely achieved through a combination of grinding with abrasive sand and polishing with leather or fabric, a process that could have taken generations for a single, large sphere. This was not a quick act of construction, but a sustained cultural project, a testament to a society that invested immense collective labor into an abstract ideal of form. But for what? The spheres were found in various arrangements, some in lines, others in triangles, and many seemingly isolated. This has led to a constellation of theories. Some researchers propose they were astronomical markers, their alignments pointing to celestial events or sacred directions. Others see them as symbols of power and status, perhaps denoting the burial sites of chiefs or the territories of important families, their size and perfection broadcasting the influence of their owners. A few even suggest they were visual representations of celestial bodies, models of the sun or moon placed in the earthly realm. Yet no written records exist, and the original contexts of many spheres were disturbed by their modern discovery, leaving their patterns broken and their stories fragmented. This loss of context is the true heart of their mystery. We can admire the feat of their creation, but the silent question they pose is one of meaning. Were they a map of the heavens, a ledger of social rank, or a sacred garden of stone planets? Their perfect, silent forms offer no answer, only a profound reminder that human beings will often invest their greatest effort not in tools for survival, but in objects that speak a language of power, cosmology. Or beauty, a language whose grammar we have forgotten. They sit now in town squares and museum gardens, removed from their jungle settings, like perfect sentences pulled from a book we can no longer read. A perfect sphere of stone is a silent monument, but a book filled with unreadable words and impossible plants is a shout of frustration. In the year 1912, a rare book dealer named acquired a peculiar manuscript from a European collection. What he purchased was not just a mystery, it was an entire universe of enigma bound in vellum. The manuscript, carbon dated to the early 15th century, is a 240-page codex written entirely in an unknown script. An alphabet that has every attempt at decipherment by the world's top cryptographers and linguists for over a century. Its pages are lavishly illustrated with vibrant, bizarre imagery. There are herbal sections showing plants that do not match any known species on Earth, their roots and leaves twisting in fantastical configurations. There are astronomical charts with unfamiliar constellations and celestial diagrams featuring strange, nested circles. There are biological sections showing small, nude female figures, often immersed in or connected by intricate networks of tubes and vessels, in a section scholars call the balneological or bathing pages. And it is here, among these bathing scenes, that we find our next category of mysterious tools. The illustrations show elaborate, tub-like structures, often occupied by the figures. These are not simple baths. They are complex apparatuses featuring interconnected pipes, spouts, and what appear to be valves or control mechanisms, all rendered with a precise, almost technical detail. The systems look like primitive plumbing or hydraulic networks, suggesting a circulation of liquids. Are these allegorical representations of the human body's inner humors, a medieval concept of health? Could they be fictional designs from a vivid imagination? Or are they based on real, lost prototypes for hydrotherapy or alchemical distillation equipment? The surrounding text, that flowing river of unknown characters, could hold the instructions for their use, the theory behind their design, or the symbolic meaning of each component. Without the key to the language, the images float in a vacuum of interpretation. They are tools without a manual, diagrams for a process we cannot name. This positions the manuscript as a unique artifact in our collection. It is not a single, physical tool, but a potential catalog of them. Its very existence suggests a realm of lost proto-scientific knowledge from the late medieval or early Renaissance period, a time when the lines between science, magic, and art were beautifully, hopelessly blurred. The manuscript's tools are ghosts twice over, once in their uncertain physical form and again in their indecipherable description. They challenge us to wonder if the most advanced designs of an era might not have been forged in metal or stone, but first conceived in ink and guarded by a cipher. A manuscript of cryptic plumbing hints at a world of unseen designs, but on the arid plains of southern Peru. An entire civilization drew its blueprints on a scale so vast it defies ground-level comprehension. Etched into the dark desert pavement are the lines, hundreds of giant depicting hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, and perfect geometric shapes, some stretching over 200 meters in length. Created by the culture between 500 before and 500 of the Common Era, these are not mere scratches in the earth. They are monumental artworks whose clean, continuous lines and precise proportions could only be the product of meticulous planning. The tools that created them, however, are a different kind of mystery. We have found no complex surveying instruments, no advanced machinery. The physical implements were almost certainly humble wooden stakes and lengths of rope. The true advanced design was not in the tool itself, but in the conceptual and mathematical technique that guided its use. How do you plot a perfect spiral or a straight line kilometers long across undulating terrain without an aerial view to correct your errors? One compelling theory involves a master plan created at a small scale. Artisans could have first designed a figure on a small plot of leveled ground, perhaps using a grid system. This design was then scaled up using a simple but effective method. A central axis line could be established using aligned stone markers or posts visible across great distances. From this baseline, teams using ropes of fixed lengths, functioning like giant compasses and rulers, could plot key points of the figure, the curves of a monkey's tail or the angle of a trapezoid. By clearing the dark, oxidized surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath, they created lines that have endured for. The staggering accuracy suggests a profound understanding of basic geometry and an almost ritualistic discipline in execution. A society capable of organizing labor around a vision that no single person could ever see in its entirety. This transforms the lines from simple drawings into a testament to collective intelligence. The advanced tool was the shared mental model, the agreed-upon method, and the social structure that could translate a small sketch into a landscape-sized symbol. Their purpose remains debated, perhaps walking paths for ceremonial processions or offerings to deities believed to control water in the parched desert. But their legacy is clear. They prove that the most sophisticated technology of a culture can be invisible, a set of ideas and practices that leave no physical trace except the breathtaking pattern they imprint upon the earth itself. A perfect spiral drawn across a desert speaks of collective vision, but a single, small object can focus a debate with startling intensity. In a storage room of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo rests an artifact known as the Saqqara bird. carved from sycamore wood and dating to roughly 200 years before the Common Era. It is a simple, elegant model, discovered in a tomb near the ancient burial complex of Saqqara. At first glance, it is a stylized bird, complete with a head, eyes, and a traditional falcon's feather pattern etched along its body. Yet its proportions are unusual. The wings are perfectly straight and rigid, not curved or shaped for flapping. The tail is vertical and flat, like a modern aircraft's rudder, unlike any natural bird's tail. It lacks the legs of a perched bird, suggesting it was meant to be airborne. For decades, it was simply as a ritual object or a child's toy, a charming but unremarkable piece of funerary art meant for the afterlife. Then, in the late 20th century, a new perspective took flight. Aeronautical engineers examining its form noted something uncanny. The wing's cross-section, its dihedral angle, and the distinctive vertical tail airfoil are design features that provide lateral stability in flight. When tested in wind tunnels by researchers, replicas of the Saqqara bird demonstrated genuine aerodynamic properties. With a small weight added to its nose for balance, the model could, in theory, glide for a considerable distance. This finding ignited a fierce and ongoing debate. Does this mean an ancient Egyptian artisan understood and intentionally applied principles of aerodynamics? Could this wooden carving be a scaled-down model of a larger, lost glider design, perhaps used in ceremonies or even as a kite? The mainstream academic view remains deeply skeptical. Egyptologists point to the overwhelming context. The tomb was filled with other bird models and symbolic items. The carving's decorations align perfectly with known artistic conventions for depicting birds, particularly the falcon, a sacred animal linked to the god Horus. In this view, any aerodynamic efficiency is a fortunate accident, a byproduct of crafting a sleek, stylized bird from a skilled woodworker's intuitive sense of form and balance. The Saqqara bird thus becomes a perfect test case, a single artifact that forces us to confront a fundamental question in interpreting the past. How do we distinguish between symbolic art and functional prototype? When does inspired design, born from a lifetime of observing birds in flight, cross over into intentional engineering? The truth may be beautifully ambiguous. Perhaps the carver was both an artist and an unconscious physicist, his hands guided by generations of observation to create a shape that simply felt right, a shape that, entirely by accident, captured a secret of the wind. The bird does not need to have flown to be profound. Its silent controversy reminds us that the line between a toy, a sacred symbol, and a scientific model is often drawn not by the ancient maker, but by the modern interpreter, looking for a function in a form that may have been created for an entirely different kind of beauty. The line between a sacred bird and a prototype glider is a testament to our own desires, and no object embodies that tension more dramatically than the infamous artifact. In February 1961, 3 men searching for geodes in the mountains near California cracked open what they thought was a promising stone nodule. Inside, instead of sparkling crystals, they found something utterly baffling. Encased within the rock was a mechanical object that bore a striking resemblance to a modern spark plug. The men reported that a local geologist estimated the surrounding stone to be 500,000 years old, a claim that would ignite a firestorm of speculation. Here was an artifact that seemed to scream of an impossible contradiction, a piece of 20th century technology trapped in prehistoric stone. The narrative was irresistible, suggesting everything from a lost advanced civilization to visitors from another time, leaving behind a mundane piece of their machinery. The object, with its ceramic insulator and rusted metal components, quickly became a legendary staple of what enthusiasts call out-of-place artifacts. Items that seem to defy the conventional historical timeline. Its very existence appeared to be a direct challenge to our understanding of human progress. Yet the true story of the artifact is not one of ancient astronauts, but of natural processes and the powerful allure of a compelling mystery. Scientific analysis and common sense eventually provided a far more grounded explanation. The object was almost certainly a champion spark plug from the 1920s, a common type used in early automobiles and small engines. How did it become encased in rock? The answer lies in a natural phenomenon called concretion, where minerals like iron oxide and clay can rapidly accumulate around an object, especially in wet, mineral-rich environments. A spark plug lost in a desert wash could, within just a few decades, become coated in a hard, stone-like shell that mimics the appearance of a geode formed over eons. The original geological assessment was flawed, a case of misidentification rather than a rewriting of history. This revelation transforms the artifact from a world-shaking mystery into a profound cautionary tale. Its lasting power lies not in what it is, but in what it represents, the deep human yearning to find evidence of our own level of sophistication, or beyond, in the distant past. We are drawn to the idea of a shattered timeline because it suggests hidden peaks of achievement, lost chapters of genius that mirror our own. The artifact reminds us that the context of discovery is everything, and that the most extraordinary claims must withstand the quiet, meticulous scrutiny of science. It is a monument not to ancient engineers, but to our own boundless capacity for wonder and the critical importance of distinguishing between the story we wish to find and the evidence that is actually there. The artifact teaches us to question the stories objects seem to tell, but sometimes a genuine artifact tells a story so unexpected it reshapes the map. In the summer of 1957, on the coast of Maine at a site known as the Farm, an amateur archaeologist was sifting through soil where Native Americans of the Penobscot Bay region had lived for centuries. His screen revealed the usual fragments of stone tools and pottery, but then something gleamed. It was a small silver coin. Brushing away the dirt, he saw a crude cross on one side and a strange, building-like structure on the other. Experts would later identify it without doubt, a Norse coin minted between 1065 and 1080 of the Common Era, during the reign of King Olaf the Peaceful of Norway. This is the main penny, and its discovery ignited a quiet revolution in thought. The coin itself is no mystery. We understand its origin and purpose completely. The profound, haunting question is how it traveled over 3,000 miles from a Scandinavian mint to a pre-Columbian shell midden in North America, over 3 centuries before Columbus set sail. Its presence is a solitary data point screaming of a connection, but the nature of that connection is a delicate puzzle. The most direct explanation is also the most dramatic, that Viking explorers from their settlements in Newfoundland, like the one at Meadows, carried it south during trading or exploration voyages along the coast, where it eventually entered indigenous hands. This would place Norse travelers deep into the Gulf of Maine, far beyond their confirmed settlements. Yet there is no supporting evidence, no other Norse artifacts at the site, no sagas describing such a journey. The alternative explanation is perhaps even more fascinating. It suggests the coin moved not on a Viking ship, but through the vast, intricate web of indigenous trade networks that span the continent. A Norse trader in Greenland or Newfoundland might have given it to a Dorset or Culture individual, perhaps as a curiosity or in exchange for goods. From there, through countless hands over generations, the coin could have traveled south, passed from tribe to tribe along established routes that moved copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Atlantic, and obsidian from the far west. In this light, the coin is not proof of a Norse visit to Maine, but a testament to the incredible reach and fluidity of Native American exchange systems. Systems capable of moving a strange silver disk across a continent over centuries. This tiny artifact, therefore, functions as a unique kind of tool, not for a physical task, but for historical reasoning. It is a probe into the shadowy edges of history, forcing us to weigh two compelling narratives. Does it mark the farthest whisper of a European foothold, or does it celebrate the silent, continent-spanning power of indigenous commerce? The Maine penny's true value is not in silver, but in the weight of the questions it forces upon us, proving that a single small object can bend the timeline of history and reveal connections we are only beginning to understand. A coin can travel across continents through trade, but a monument of iron can stand defiantly in one place for 16 centuries. In the complex in Delhi, India, a single pillar of wrought iron rises over 7 meters into the air. Forged during the powerful Gupta Empire around the year 400 of the Common Era, it is a staggering feat of ancient engineering. Known simply as the Iron Pillar of Delhi, it is not mysterious in its purpose. An inscription clearly states it was erected in honor of the Hindu god Vishnu and a king named. Its true, breathtaking mystery is not why it was made, but how it has survived. After more than 1,600 years exposed to sun, monsoon rains, and modern pollution, the pillar shows only the most superficial signs of rust. It possesses a corrosion resistance that rivals some modern stainless steels, a property that should be utterly impossible for ancient wrought iron. This is not a case of forgotten function, but of a lost formula, a manufacturing secret so potent it has kept the elements at bay for. The pillar itself is the testament, but the advanced tool was the invisible knowledge in the minds of the Gupta-era metalworkers. Modern scientists have analyzed the pillar's composition, and they point to a brilliant, likely accidental recipe. The iron is unusually high in phosphorus, a result of the unique ore and charcoal used in its production, and very low in sulfur and manganese. This specific chemistry, combined with the skilled, even hammering of the forge which created a protective layer of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate, has granted it near immunity to the ravages of time. The process was so effective that, when British colonial engineers attempted to move a similar ancient iron pillar in the 19th century, it shattered, its metallurgical integrity lost to history. So here we have a monument that is also a perfect scientific specimen. It represents a pinnacle of ancient materials science, a functional object whose very existence is a challenge. We can analyze its composition, but we cannot fully replicate the specific conditions, the particular sequence of heating, hammering, and cooling that sprung from a tradition of craftsmanship rather than a written manual. The pillar's resistance is not a magic spell, but a happy and profound convergence of resource, technique, and environment, a knowledge so deeply embedded in practice that it vanished when the practice ceased. It stands today not as a riddle of use, but as a silent lesson in humility, proving that the most sophisticated tools of the ancient world were sometimes not objects you could hold, but processes you had to know. Processes that could turn earth and fire into a metal that would patiently outlast empires, dynasties, and entire eras of human history. The Iron Pillar of Delhi stands as a testament to forgotten formulas, but other ancient artisans worked with a material that captured light itself. In the ruins of the Assyrian palace at Nimrud, and within the grand complexes of Minoan Crete, archaeologists have uncovered small, carefully shaped pieces of rock crystal. These are not mere decorative beads. They have been ground into smooth, convex forms, some with a distinct curvature that modern analysis shows can bend light. They possess a genuine, measurable ability to magnify small objects or to concentrate the sun's rays into a bright, hot point. The immediate question is as clear as the crystal itself. What were they for? The simplest answer is that they were beautiful inlays, set into jewelry or furniture to catch the light and dazzle the eye, their optical effect being a happy accident of the lapidary's quest for a perfect, gleaming surface. Yet the potential for function whispers of more intriguing possibilities. Held in the hand, such a lens could have served as a powerful visual aid for a master craftsman, perhaps a seal carver or a jeweler, allowing them to execute the minute. Breathtaking details we find on artifacts from these cultures. The tiny, intricate spirals on a Minoan seal stone or the precise cuneiform wedges on an Assyrian cylinder seal become imaginable with such a tool. Alternatively, these crystals could have been used as burning lenses, a practical and almost magical technology. Focusing the sun's diffuse warmth into a searing pinpoint, a skilled user could ignite tinder, a valuable trick in an age before matches. This transforms a beautiful stone into a tool of creation and control, a way to harness a fundamental force. The debate is not about what the crystal can do, but what its maker intended it to do. Did an artisan, after polishing countless stones, notice that one particular shape made distant marks appear closer, and then deliberately replicate that form? Or was the primary drive always aesthetic, with the magnifying power remaining an unremarked curiosity? These objects exist in a fascinating gray area between ornament and instrument. They suggest a period of tactile experimentation, where the manipulation of light through material was being explored, perhaps without a formal theory of optics to explain why it worked. They are prototypes in the truest sense, not of a single device, but of an idea that clear stone could do more than glitter. It could clarify, concentrate, and connect the human eye to a world of finer detail. A crystal lens bends light for a craftsperson's eye, but for a sailor lost under a featureless gray sky, a different kind of crystal promised salvation. The Norse sagas, those epic poems of Viking exploration, speak of a magical stone. On days when the sun was hidden behind thick cloud or fog, a skilled navigator could hold this sunstone aloft, peer through it, and somehow still find the sun's position in the blank heavens. For centuries, this was dismissed as pure myth, a poetic metaphor for a captain's intuition. Then, science offered a startling possibility. A transparent crystal known as Iceland spar, a form of calcite that the Vikings could have easily collected, possesses a unique property called birefringence. When light passes through it, the crystal splits the light into two beams. By rotating the stone and looking for the point where the two beams match in intensity, a user can determine the direction of polarized sunlight, which scatters in predictable patterns across the sky, even when the sun itself is obscured. Modern experiments have proven it works. A trained person using a piece of Iceland spar can locate the sun's position with remarkable accuracy on a completely overcast day. Yet here lies the profound gap between story and substance. Not a single archaeological find has been conclusively identified as a Viking sunstone. No crystal rests in a museum case with a runic label declaring its purpose. It exists only as a ghost in the record, a tool known solely from literature. This absence speaks volumes about how fragile advanced knowledge can be. The sunstone was not a complex machine of gears and metal that might survive in a shipwreck. It was a simple crystal, its power residing not in its form, but in the specialized skill required to use it, a skill passed from master to apprentice through demonstration and oral tradition. When that chain of knowledge was broken, perhaps by the adoption of the magnetic compass or the upheaval of changing societies, the tool did not just vanish from the toolbox, it vanished from the physical record entirely, leaving behind only an echo in a saga. The Sunstone, therefore, is more than a potential navigational aid. It is a symbol of all the intangible technologies we have lost, the perishable wisdom that turned a simple object into a key for crossing oceans. A reminder that some of history's most advanced designs were not etched in stone or cast in bronze, but held in the mind and spoken on the breath. The silent symbols of the disc hold a deeper secret than their undeciphered message. Each of those 45 distinct signs, from the marching warrior to the plumed helmet, was not carved by hand. They were stamped. For the disc to exist, its creator must have possessed a full set of individual seal stamps, one for every, each a small, handheld punch that could be pressed into soft clay again and again. This simple fact transforms the artifact from a written mystery into a technological earthquake. It means that over 3,000 years before assembled his metal letters in Mainz, a Minoan artisan on Crete was using a form of movable type. The concept is staggering. A system for reproducible text, a technology that implies a desire to duplicate messages efficiently, existed in the Bronze Age. Yet here the mystery doubles, then triples. Where are the stamps themselves? Not a single one has ever been found. If this was a true printing system, even a primitive one, we would expect to find other imprints, other documents bearing the same symbols. Perhaps administrative records or religious texts stamped onto clay tablets or even perishable material, but we find nothing. The disc is utterly alone. This profound absence forces a haunting question. Were these stamps created for the sole, singular purpose of producing this one elaborate disc, like a special set of tools forged for a single royal commission, and then discarded or stored away, never to be used again? Or does their absence point to a darker truth about the preservation of knowledge? Perhaps the stamps were made of wood or another organic material that simply rotted away in Crete's climate, while the messages they printed were on cloth or parchment that turned to dust. The disc, fired in a kiln, would be the only survivor. This possibility is even more tantalizing. It suggests the disc might not be an anomaly, but a rare fossil, a single baked clay snapshot of a much wider practice of stamped communication that has otherwise completely vanished from the archaeological record. We are left with a ghost of a technology. The individual seals represent a potential revolution in communication that flickered into existence, left one magnificent and cryptic testament, and then disappeared for over 30 centuries. Their silence is a powerful reminder that an idea can be born, applied with brilliant ingenuity, and still be lost to time, waiting for another civilization to reinvent it. Unaware that the blueprint had already been pressed into clay and then quietly erased by a crystal that could find the sun hints at knowledge held only in the mind. But in the great library of Alexandria, another mind committed pure principle to parchment. In the 1st century of the Common Era, the engineer and mathematician Hero described a device of elegant simplicity. He called it picture a hollow metal sphere mounted to rotate freely between two pipes. These pipes channeled steam from a sealed cauldron of boiling water below into the sphere. The sphere had two bent nozzles, or jets, protruding from opposite sides. As the steam rushed out through these jets, the sphere itself would whirl, spinning faster and faster on its axis from the sheer force of the reaction. This was, in every functional sense, a steam engine. It converted thermal energy into mechanical motion. Hero's writings treat it not as a secret of industry, but as a marvelous demonstration, a temple wonder to amaze and educate. It was a philosophical toy, a physical proof of the properties of air and vapor, meant to illustrate the principles of his craft. And this is where its story becomes a profound historical crossroads. The ancient world had the technical capacity to build it. They understood metalworking, they had mastered seals and bearings for other devices. They even possessed the foundational concept. Yet the spinning sphere remained just that, a captivating demonstration. No one connected it to a wheel, a pump, or a mill. The function was complete in its own mesmerizing spin. The question that haunts us is not how it worked, but why it stopped there. Why was this clear, practical power never harnessed for the drudgery of labor? The answers are woven into the fabric of that society. Economics played a role. Slave labor was abundant and cheap, reducing the urgent incentive to replace human muscle with steam. The social structure of knowledge also mattered. Engineering and mechanics were often pursuits of the scholarly elite, more concerned with understanding nature's secrets than with revolutionizing the work of the field or the quarry. The therefore is a ghost of a path not taken. It stands as a silent monument to the immense gap between invention and application. A society can possess a brilliant, functional prototype and still lack the social, economic, or imaginative catalyst to see it as anything more than a fascinating toy. It spins in our historical imagination not as a failure, but as a poignant reminder that technological progress is not a straight line of inevitable discovery. It is a branching tree, and some branches, no matter how promising, remain bare, leaving us to wonder about the shape of a world that might have been born from a single steaming sphere. Her spinning sphere was a marvel of isolated principle, but high in the Andes, an entire civilization built a functioning state with a different kind of engine. The Inca Empire, stretching thousands of miles along the spine of South America, managed its vast territories, its storehouses, and its millions of people without a wheel, without a written alphabet as we know it. Their administrative power flowed through a deceptively simple, yet profoundly complex device, the quipu. At first glance, a quipu is just a collection of colored cords, often made from cotton or camelid wool, hanging from a primary horizontal string. But look closer. Each pendant cord is tied with a series of knots, their type, position, and sequence arranged with meticulous care. The colors themselves are not random, different hues representing different categories of information. Spanish chroniclers who witnessed the Inca system in operation reported that these knotted strings recorded everything: census data, tax obligations, military organization, and calendrical cycles. They were the ledger books of an empire, a tactile database that could be rolled up and carried by a runner along the stone-paved highways. The numerical code is partially understood. The Incas used a based-end positional system, where the type of knot and its placement on the cord denoted units, tens, hundreds, and so on. A figure-8 knot represented the number 1. A long knot with multiple turns could signify 2 through 9, depending on its turns, and a space left empty, a 0. This in itself is an advanced mathematical tool, a physical calculator for a pre-literate society. Yet the deeper mystery, the one that tantalizes researchers, lies beyond the numbers. Some quipus, particularly those found in burial contexts far from the imperial heartland, do not follow the familiar numerical patterns. Their structures are more complex, their color combinations more narrative. This has led to a revolutionary and still contested theory that some quipus may have been capable of encoding narrative, historical, or even linguistic information. They might not just record how many bushels of maize were in a storehouse, but the story of a harvest, the genealogy of a lord, or the verses of a sacred hymn. If this is true, then the quipu is not merely an accounting tool, it is a three-dimensional writing system, a language made from fiber and knot. The true tool, then, was not the object itself, but the mind of the keeper of the knots. This specialist was a living decoder, trained from youth to read the stories held in the cords, to feel the history in the twists of yarn. Their knowledge was the operating system for this technology, a system passed down through apprenticeship and oral tradition. When the Spanish conquest dismantled the Inca state and these specialists were lost, the operating system crashed. We are left with the hardware, hundreds of quipus in museums, but without the software, the trained human mind to interpret them. They are complex data storage devices for which we have lost the password. Each one is a locked archive, a library of knotted whispers waiting for a key we may never find. They stand as the ultimate metaphor for lost knowledge, proving that the most advanced design can be perfectly preserved in form, yet remain utterly silent in function. Its meaning retreating with the last specialist who knew how to listen to the strings, but a knotted string could only record a journey already taken. To navigate the unknown, the Chinese imperial court possessed a chariot that seemed to think for itself. Ancient texts from the Han Dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period describe a magnificent vehicle known as the South-Pointing Chariot. This was no ordinary carriage. It was a mechanical marvel, a large, ornate chariot upon which stood a carved figure, its arm perpetually outstretched toward the south. The true magic was that no matter how the chariot turned, twisted, or circled during a procession, the figure on top would rotate on its platform, compensating for every movement to keep its finger steadfastly aimed in the same cardinal direction. This was not a magnetic compass. It was a purely mechanical automaton, an early and breathtaking application of differential gearing. The system used a complex arrangement of gears connected to the chariot's wheels. As the wheels turned, the gears would calculate the difference in rotation between the two sides, such as when going around a curve, and use that difference to turn the statue in the exact opposite direction, canceling out the chariot's turn. The engineering precision required to craft gears that could perform this calculation reliably, likely from wood or bronze, is astonishing. It represents a pinnacle of mechanical thought dedicated not to labor, but to orientation and spectacle. And here lies its beautiful duality. What was it for? The practical interpretation is compelling. A non-magnetic navigational aid for traversing featureless plains or dense fog, allowing a military convoy or diplomatic mission to maintain its bearing over long, winding distances. Yet its descriptions in court records suggest another, equally important function: theater. The South-Pointing Chariot was a masterpiece of demonstrative engineering, a moving wonder designed to inspire awe and confirm the emperor's mandate. Its very existence projected a powerful message, that the imperial court could harness the most subtle principles of mechanics to defy confusion and impose perfect order, even on a winding path. The chariot itself, like so many delicate technologies of ceremony, has not survived. We have detailed texts describing its principles and later Chinese reconstructions from subsequent dynasties that prove the concept worked flawlessly. But the original Han or Three Kingdoms designs, the specific gear trains that first solved this puzzle, are lost. They are ghosts of precision, reminding us that in some cultures, the highest engineering was often poured into objects meant to dazzle the mind and symbolize cosmic harmony, blending the artist's vision with the mechanic's genius into a single, south-pointing idea. Far from the imperial roads of China, in the misty green landscapes of Neolithic Scotland, another kind of carved perfection emerges from the deep past. Over 450 of them have been found, scattered across the country, each one a small, dense sphere of stone that fits perfectly in the palm of your hand. They are the Scottish carved stone balls, and they are objects of mesmerizing, purposeful beauty. Dating from around 3,000 to 2,000 years before the Common Era, they are carved from a variety of hard stones like granite and sandstone. Their surfaces are not smooth, but are divided by deep grooves into a series of projecting knobs, most commonly 6, but ranging from 3 to over 160. The symmetry is flawless, the curves of each lobe meeting with geometric precision that speaks of immense skill and patience, achieved with only stone tools. It is this very perfection that makes their silence so profound. What were they for? The theories are as numerous as the knobs on the most complex balls. Their heft and solidity once suggested they were weapons, perhaps tied to leather thongs as boluses or mace heads, yet most show no signs of impact damage. Their uniformity in size and weight hinted they could be standard measures for trade, but no two are exactly alike. Perhaps they were weights for the bottom of fishing nets or tools for working leather, their knobs providing a secure grip. A more dramatic idea proposes they were used in the transportation of the massive megaliths that dot the same landscape, placed underneath a stone as rollers to reduce friction. Yet again, the surfaces lack the consistent grinding such use would produce. Their wide distribution, from the islands to the lowlands, suggests a shared cultural understanding, a standardized purpose that was common knowledge for over 1,000 years. But without a single written word or an unambiguous depiction from their time, that knowledge evaporated. They are perhaps the example of an artifact that is both utterly familiar in its craftsmanship and utterly alien in its intent. They were clearly important, valued, and crafted with a vision that transcended mere utility. This leads many to see them not as tools for the body, but for the spirit. Their perfect, orbiting forms may have represented celestial bodies, or symbols of unity and community. They could have been objects of authority, held by a chieftain during ceremonies, their intricate form a tactile demonstration of power and order. They are a pre-literate society's philosophy made solid, a three-dimensional thought whose meaning we can only circle around, forever touching the knobs but never grasping the core idea that connected them all. A perfect sphere of stone holds a silent philosophy, but a cup of Roman glass holds trapped light. In the cool quiet of a museum, the Lycurgus cup appears at first as a beautiful but unremarkable artifact. Carved from a single block of glass in the 4th century, it is a cage cup, where an outer lattice of figures has been painstakingly cut away to leave an inner vessel, a testament to a lapidary's supreme patience. The scene depicts the mythical king Lycurgus, ensnared by vines for his defiance of the god Dionysus. In reflected light, the cup glows a subdued, opaque green. But turn on a light inside it or hold it up to a window and a miracle happens. The entire vessel transforms, glowing a translucent, vibrant ruby red. This is not a trick of the paint or a filter. This is dichroic glass, a material that changes color based on the direction of the light passing through it. For over 1,500 years, this property was a beautiful mystery, a piece of magic preserved in silica. Then, in the 1990s, scientists placed fragments under powerful electron microscopes. The answer was both simple and staggering. The Roman glassmakers had, whether by intent or incredible accident, infused the glass with a microscopic cocktail of precious metals. They had ground gold and silver into particles so unimaginably fine, each one measuring about 50 nanometers across, smaller than a wavelength of visible light. This is the realm of nanotechnology. At this scale, these colloidal particles interact with light in a specific way. They absorb the blue and green wavelengths in reflected light, letting the red pass through and scatter the red in transmitted light, creating that ethereal glow. The precision required is almost beyond belief. Too much metal and the glass turns opaque and muddy. Too little and the effect vanishes. The particles must be uniformly small and evenly dispersed. So how did they do it, without any concept of the nanometer or the physics of light scattering? One compelling theory suggests a process of alchemical contamination. Perhaps a goldsmith's or silversmith's grinding stone, used to polish precious metal, was later used to grind minerals for glassmaking. Tiny, invisible flecks of gold and silver dust from that stone could have contaminated the glass batch, and through repeated melting and working, the heat broke the particles down to the perfect, nano-sized state. In this view, the Lycurgus cup is the most magnificent accident in history, a one-in-a-million confluence of impurity and art. The alternative is a thought almost too daring to hold, that Roman artisans had developed a repeatable, if not fully understood, technique for creating this effect. A few other fragments of dichroic glass from the era exist, suggesting it was not a singular fluke. Could they have intentionally added a pinch of a special gold or silver compound to the melt, a recipe passed from master to apprentice as a sacred secret? We will likely never know. The cup's function was ceremonial, a dazzling display piece for a wealthy patron, perhaps used in rituals dedicated to Dionysus himself, but its true tool was not the glass cutter's lathe. It was the unseen, unrecorded process in the workshop, a sublime intersection of material, heat, and chance that created a color-changing wonder. It stands as a masterpiece of ancient alchemy, where the pursuit of beauty inadvertently stumbled into a realm of science that would not be formally mapped for another millennium and a half. The Lycurgus cup captures light in a dance of color, but on a windswept hill in southeastern Turkey, an entire landscape was carved to capture something far grander. The human imagination at the very dawn of community. Rising from the earth are circles of massive, limestone pillars, each one meticulously shaped into a stark, unmistakable form, a capital T this is. And these T-shaped obelisks are the oldest known megaliths on our planet, erected over 11,000 years ago. To stand before them is to feel time collapse. They were raised by hunter-gatherers, people we have long pictured as nomadic bands focused solely on survival, before the invention of agriculture, writing, or metal tools. Yet here is their work, pillars weighing 10, 20, even 50 tons, from nearby bedrock, shaped, transported, and set into precisely arranged rings. The immediate, staggering question is not just why, but how. With what tools did they achieve this? We find no metal chisels, no advanced pulleys. The toolkit was almost certainly one of flint, of chert, and of immense patience. They would have used harder stones to pound and peck at the limestone, shaping the monolithic forms over months or years. Wooden levers and ropes made from plant fibers likely aided in moving them, perhaps on a slick track of mud and water. But the true tools here were intangible, social, and cognitive. The organization required speaks of a society capable of marshaling large groups of people, feeding them, housing them, and directing their labor toward a project with no obvious utilitarian return. This was not a wall for defense or a granary for storage. It was a temple complex, a sacred space, and that fact rewrites the story of civilization itself. For generations, we believed that agriculture came first, providing the surplus food that allowed for specialization, hierarchy, and grand architecture. Turns that sequence on its head. Here, it seems the drive to build something monumental, to gather for a shared spiritual purpose, may have been the catalyst. The need to feed the builders and the pilgrims might have spurred the deliberate cultivation of wild grains, planting the very seeds of settled farming life. The T-shape of the pillars deepens the symbolic mystery. Some are blank, austere sentinels. Others are carved with a menagerie of power, foxes, snakes, scorpions, and birds, creatures of a vibrant spiritual world. The T itself is now widely interpreted as a stylized human form, the crossbar representing shoulders and head. These are not abstract posts. They are ancestors, gods, or guardians watching over the ritual space. Their precise function within ceremonies is lost to us, but their presence is a declaration. They say that long before cities, before kings, before written law, human beings felt a profound need to come together and shape their world on a colossal scale, to literally raise their ideals in stone. Therefore, is more than an archaeological site. It is a master tool for rethinking history. It forces us to consider that the first blueprint for civilization may not have been an economic contract, but a sacred vision, drawn not on parchment, but on the very fabric of a hill. With megaliths as its first, enduring words, the perfect symmetry of pillars was carved with flint and vision. But what happens when an object is found in a place it simply should not be? Deep in a South African mine, workers have occasionally unearthed strange metallic spheres. They are known as the Klerksdorp spheres, and they are small, often no bigger than a walnut, with a perfectly spherical shape and parallel grooves encircling their equator like tiny, artificial planets. The material is a hard, nickel-steel alloy, and the truly startling claim is that they have been found embedded in mineral deposits dated to an astonishing 2.8 billion years old. On the surface, the narrative writes itself, a manufactured object from a time before multicellular life existed on Earth. It is a story that speaks directly to our fascination with impossible timelines and visitors from a forgotten age. Yet the scientific investigation into these spheres reveals a far more intricate and ultimately natural story. Geologists point to a common, if remarkable, process. They are likely concretions, formed when mineral matter precipitated around a microscopic nucleus, like a grain of sand within soft sediment. Over immense geological time, under pressure and heat, these layers can crystallize into extremely hard spheres, the parallel grooves. They could be the result of crystal growth patterns or the impressions of surrounding layered rock that weathered away at a different rate. They are not tools, but tricks of deep time, nature's own masterpieces of mimicry. A similar enigma emerged from a 19th-century Austrian mine. Workers breaking apart a seam of coal, itself formed from vegetation that died over 300,000 years ago, found a heavy, cuboid lump of iron inside. This is the iron, or the Salzburg cube. Its sharp edges and geometric form immediately suggested something crafted, a piece of ancient metalwork lost in a prehistoric forest. Once again, the allure of an out-of-place artifact was powerful. But metallurgical analysis told a different tale. The object is not smelted iron, but a rare form of iron meteorite, specifically a type known as a. Its blocky shape is a result of its crystalline structure, which naturally cleaves along geometric planes as it travels through the atmosphere and impacts the ground. It is a product of cosmic forces, not human ones. These objects, the Klerksdorp spheres and the iron, represent a crucial and often misunderstood category in our search for ancient mysteries. They are not unexplained tools with a lost purpose, but rather explained natural formations that challenge our perception. They force us to confront the powerful human tendency to see design and intention in the random, beautiful complexity of the natural world. This is where hard science meets the outer edges of speculation. For every genuine, enigmatic artifact like the mechanism, there exists a shadow category of these geological oddities. Their true function is not to open a door to a lost civilization, but to teach a vital lesson about context and evidence. They remind us that the geological record is a master sculptor, capable of creating forms of deceptive precision over millions of years. The debate they fuel is less about the objects themselves and more about our own methodology. What standards of proof do we demand before labeling something an advanced tool? How rigorously do we question the context of a find? These anomalies, once stripped of their sensational claims, become tools for a different kind of thinking. They are probes that test the strength of our historical reasoning, cautioning us that the most thrilling mystery is sometimes not a sign of forgotten genius, but a testament to nature's boundless and often misleading. Creativity, a perfect sphere of stone, is a tool held in the hand, but a circle of megaliths is a tool that holds the sky. Across continents, and from the windswept plains of Salisbury to the dense jungles of the ancient cultures invested their greatest collective effort not in handheld devices, but in monumental architecture designed to interact with the heavens themselves. Sites like Stonehenge, the Pyramid of the Sun at the Circle in Germany, and the Observatory at are, in essence, the most ambitious tools on our list. They are landscape-scale instruments, their function built directly into alignment, shadow, and space. We can measure with modern precision how a shaft of sunlight pierces a temple doorway only on the summer solstice, or how the moon rises in perfect notch between two stones only every 18.6 years. The engineering is undeniable, a triumph of observation, planning, and brute force labor. Yet, for all the certainty of their celestial targeting, the human purpose behind these alignments remains a realm of profound interpretation, not fact. What exactly was being measured, and for whom? These structures were far more than giant calendars or clocks. A calendar tells you the date, but it does not command your presence, your awe, or your obedience. When thousands gathered to watch the undulating serpent of shadow descend the steps of El on the equinox, they were participating in something far more potent than timekeeping. They were witnessing the reaffirmation of a cosmic order, a direct, theatrical link between the ruler and the sun god. The pyramid became a stage, the sunlight a special effect, and the populace an audience to a drama of divine legitimacy. Similarly, Stonehenge's alignments to the solstices likely framed ceremonies that tied the community's life cycle to that of the sun, perhaps marking times for gathering, for rites of passage, or for honoring ancestors. The circle, a simple yet precise arrangement of wooden palisades in Germany dating back nearly 7,000 years, created a controlled, sacred space where only a select few might have witnessed the sunrise and sunset on the shortest day of the year, turning astronomical knowledge into a source of exclusive, and therefore powerful, authority. This is the core mystery these sites present. They are tools with a clear mechanical function, celestial observation, but their true output was not data, it was meaning. They were factories for producing social cohesion, spiritual certainty, and political control. The advanced design was not merely in aligning tons of stone with a star, but in weaving that alignment into the very fabric of belief and society. The monument itself became an interface between the human and the divine, a permanent, immutable contract written in earth and stone that said, "Our leaders are priests. Our way of life are sanctioned by the turning of the cosmos itself. To question the social order was to question the path of the sun." This integration of tool and architecture represents a pinnacle of ancient ingenuity. It moves technology from the portable and personal into the communal and eternal. We can deduce the what, the precise astronomical moment they marked. But the why, the specific prayers spoken, the rituals performed, the laws enacted under that specific light, has evaporated like morning mist from the stones. These silent observatories ask us to consider that the most sophisticated tool a civilization can build might be one that shapes not metal, but minds. Using the immutable movements of the heavens to choreograph the complex dance of human society, monuments of stone can align a society with the cosmos, but the most profound tool of all leaves no physical trace. It is the very idea of loss itself, the conceptual framework that accepts whole libraries of expertise can vanish from human memory. This is our 30th and final tool, a meta-tool for humility. It is the understanding that technological progress is not an inevitable upward staircase, but a landscape of isolated peaks and hidden valleys. Consider Roman concrete. For centuries, we have marveled at how their harbor structures, submerged in the corrosive sea for 2,000 years, stand stronger than our modern equivalents. The recipe was lost with the empire's decline. Modern analysis has only recently revealed the secret, a reactive volcanic ash that creates a self-healing mineral when seawater seeps in, a brilliant process the Romans perfected through practice, not chemical theory. Or take the legendary Damascus steel, the Wootz blades of the medieval Near East famed for their sharpness, flexibility, and distinctive watery pattern. The exact method of forging, involving specific ores from India and a precise, multi-stage process of heating and cooling, faded away by the 18th century. Modern metallurgists can analyze the blades and find carbon nanotubes within the metal, but they cannot perfectly replicate the artisan's full, embodied knowledge, the feel of the heat, the timing of the hammer strikes. The intuition passed from master to apprentice. These are not just lost objects, they are lost processes. The concrete and the steel are the products, but the true tools were the unwritten recipes, the trained eyes, and the community of practice that sustained them. This conceptual tool forces a vital shift in perspective. It asks us to look at every artifact we have explored not as an isolated puzzle, but as a potential survivor from a much larger ecosystem of knowledge. The mechanism hints at a tradition of geared devices. The disc suggests a school of celestial navigation. The iron pillar's resistance points to a deep, localized mastery of materials. Each one is a single page rescued from a burning library. The loss is rarely due to a single catastrophe. More often, it is a slow erosion. A craft becomes economically unviable, its masters die without students, a key resource becomes scarce, or a new technology displaces an old one without preserving its underlying principles. The knowledge retreats from the public sphere into private hands, then into obscurity, and finally into the silent earth. This framework is not a counsel of despair, but a call for a deeper kind of curiosity. It teaches us that our own technological confidence might be, in the grand sweep of time, just as fragile. What foundational skills of our own era, dependent on vast global supply chains or digital systems, might become indecipherable to a future civilization that finds a smartphone or a solar panel? The concept of lost knowledge is the ultimate tool for interpretation. It allows us to sit with the mystery of the Dodecahedron or the disk without rushing to a simple answer. It lets us appreciate that the highest ingenuity of a culture might have been invested in something ephemeral, a technique, a ceremony, or a way of seeing the world that evaporated when the people who held it passed on. This final tool does not solve the puzzles of the past. Instead, it reframes the very act of questioning. It reminds us that history is not merely the story of what we have gained, but also a sobering, beautiful narrative of all that we have, for now, left behind. These scattered fragments of genius, when gathered together, begin to form a constellation of their own. Stepping back from the individual puzzles of the gear or the Roman dodecahedron, a broader landscape comes into focus. One etched with recurring patterns that tell us less about specific functions and more about the universal preoccupations of the ancient mind. A striking number of these enigmatic objects are pointed skyward. From the sky disk's gold stars to the stone circles from the bearing dial to the celestial gearing of the armillary sphere, the human drive to map, measure, and predict the heavens appears as a powerful engine for innovation. This was not idle stargazing, it was a survival strategy written in bronze and stone. Knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to navigate open water, or when to conduct a ceremony that reaffirmed cosmic order, these were the most pressing problems of their age. The solutions they crafted were often the most advanced technologies they possessed. Another clear pattern lies in the mastery of materials, often achieved through means we still struggle to fully replicate. The iron pillar of Delhi defies corrosion through a chemical recipe lost to time. The Lycurgus cup manipulates light with nanoparticles, a product of either sublime accident or guarded alchemical art. The perfect sphericity of the Costa stones or the seamless joins of the Great Pyramid speak to a tactile, practiced knowledge of stone and force that was passed hand to hand, not through written manuals. These were technologies of the body and the senses, embedded in the rhythm of the workshop and the intuition of the craftsperson, making them uniquely vulnerable to being lost when that chain of practice was broken. And this points to perhaps the most profound pattern of all, the conditions that create the mystery in the first place. So often, the function evaporates because the supporting context has vanished. We find the disc, but not the movable type that stamped it. We have the South-Pointing Chariot's description, but not the original geared mechanism. We can theorize about the use of a crystal lens, but we lack the artisan's notes or a depiction of it in use. The knowledge existed in a fragile ecosystem of perishable materials, oral instruction, and daily practice. When a society shifts, when a trade route closes, or when a craft guild dissolves, that ecosystem can collapse, leaving behind only the most durable and often most cryptic artifacts as fossils of a much larger living system. This leads us to a crucial insight about our own modern perspective. We often approach these objects with a bias towards singular, practical utility. We ask, what chore did this perform? But for many ancient cultures, the divisions we take for granted between tool, artwork, and sacred object simply did not exist. The quipu was both an accounting ledger and a narrative tapestry. The relief was a spiritual diagram that we misread as an electrical schematic. The Scottish carved stone ball may have been a weight, a weapon, a ritual object, and a philosophical symbol all at once. Their advanced design frequently served a unified worldview where understanding the cosmos, honoring the gods, and structuring society were facets of the same endeavor. To search for a single, mundane function is sometimes to miss the point entirely. These patterns do not hand us the keys to the locked boxes. Instead, they give us a different kind of map. It is a map that shows where the minds of antiquity concentrated their most profound curiosity, at the intersection of the observable world and the world of meaning. They were not just building gadgets, they were building a comprehensible universe, and the artifacts that confuse us the most are often the cornerstones of that lost architecture of understanding. These silent witnesses of stone and bronze are not merely relics of forgotten utility. They are profound testaments to the boundless creativity of the human mind, a creativity that did not wait for our modern labels to begin solving the grand puzzles of existence. Each unexplained artifact, from the celestial computer to the perfect geometry of the Costa spheres, serves as a deliberate challenge to our assumptions. They ask us to look beyond the linear timeline of progress we have so carefully constructed and to consider a far richer, more complex landscape. History is not a simple, solved puzzle with all its pieces neatly in place. It is a dynamic, ever-shifting field of discovery, where every new excavation or technological analysis can overturn a century of settled thought. These objects remind us that genius is not the exclusive property of our era. It is a spark that has flared, sometimes brightly and sometimes in isolation, across the entire human journey. They prove that our ancestors were not primitive figures stumbling toward enlightenment, but sophisticated thinkers who observed their world with sharp eyes and sought to interact with it, using the most advanced means at their disposal. Whether mapping stars onto a disk of gold, calculating seismic waves with a bronze urn, or encoding an empire's memory in knotted strings, they were engaging in the same fundamental act we do today. Using technology to extend their reach, to impose order, and to find meaning. The true lesson of these 30 mysteries, then, is not that we have lost specific blueprints for gears or lenses. It is that we have lost a sense of the possible breadth of ancient thought. Our own categories of science, art, and religion can be blinding when applied to cultures that saw these realms as inseparable. The next time you look at a star chart or hold a finely crafted tool, let these ancient linger in your mind. Let them inspire a deeper, more humble curiosity. What other chapters of ingenuity have been erased by time, fire, or the slow decay of materials? What masterpieces of understanding were written on parchment that turned to dust, or spoken in languages that fell silent? The ground beneath our feet and the shelves of our museums may still hold secrets waiting for their moment of rediscovery, poised to once again redefine the story we tell about ourselves. Which of these mysteries speaks most powerfully to you? Is it the solitary message of the disk, the cosmic ambition of the sky disk, or the quiet, enduring defiance of the iron pillar? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to join us as we continue to unravel the deep and wondrous secrets of our shared past.